All right. So today I am here with Johnny Pease, and Johnny is the Connections Director over at Life Church in Washington State. So really excited to chat today, Johnny.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chris. Appreciate the time and for having me on.
Absolutely. And I'm curious, Johnny. We were kind of talking a bit about your background and stuff, and the roles you've had at Life Church. Could you kind of share like what called you into ministry, and how did you find your way to Life Church?
Yeah, that's great. So my family started coming to Life Church back in 2002 when I was a little kid. So we moved out
Mhm.
to Walla Walla, Washington, where our main campus is. And
Yeah.
back then it was a church of about a few hundred. And we just moved into a new building. And my parents were looking around for churches to go to. And so then we came here and felt like the Lord had called us to this church. I was about six at the time, so I just went where mom and dad said we're going to church, and then I've been here since then. And so over the years, I served in a few different areas growing up, and then when I was about 15 or so, I got involved in helping with our worship team. Started playing music when I was a kid, and yeah, that was kind of where I really started serving and really feeling I
Mm.
guess just a heart for serving in ministry. I never really thought I would be full time in ministry. That wasn't really on my grand plan or my 5 year plan, but just remained where I felt like God had me. And after graduating high school, I got a job working at a local credit union here because I wanted to continue to serve at my church, and that was a job that lended itself well to just when church stuff is. You got weekends off and are off pretty early in the evening. So I helped at our youth ministry and all that. So, and then a few years down the road, about 5.5 years ago now, my pastors offered me a job to oversee our creative department, which for us, that's design and video production,
Mhm.
communications, all that sort of stuff. And so I operated in that role, took the job and operated in that role for about 5 years, and then just recently moved into our connections director role, which is overseeing really our whole next steps processes, new visitors, and everything involved with that. Our dream team, really kind of I guess you would call it an assimilations process for our church. So that's
Yeah.
that's my role now. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that touches on a lot of stuff. So let's rewind. You mentioned you started going to Life Church when you were young and got involved on the worship team, involved in music. Like, I'm curious, when talking about involvement in music, like what instruments did you play? Or like what was your kind of like role on the praise team, on the worship team that you started
Yeah.
volunteering
Yeah, so growing up, my mom, I was homeschooled, so my mom taught us
with?
all
Awesome.
piano, all me and my brothers, and
Okay.
so uh, played piano a lot growing up. And then when I was 12, I was like, I want to start playing guitar, so I bought a guitar, and then
Absolutely.
because that's what every 12-year-old, they just want to be a rock star. So
Oh
that was the
yeah.
plan then. But yeah, so after that, I was like, hey, I want to be involved in worship. But initially, I started out playing keys because
Mhm.
that was where the need was for our team, and then did that for a little while, and then moved into playing bass, and then eventually started playing guitar. But really,
Awesome.
really most of my ministry story, or testimony, if you will, I guess I don't know what the right word is, but
Mhm.
is just being available and filling whatever need there was to fill. So if we needed keys, I just was like, all right, I'll do that. My brother was the bass player, and then our drummer moved, so he learned drums, and I learned bass, and filled that need
Okay.
for a few years, and then started playing guitar after we found a new bass player. So yeah, and
Awesome.
then started leading worship at 17. So that's when I started singing and
Uh,
actually leading our youth team, and that's kind of
yeah.
primarily what I do now is the leading side.
Awesome. Well, that is spectacular. So,
Yeah.
yeah, music is powerful and a great way to, start serving. So, you mentioned right now you are responsible for growing the dream team, assimilating volunteers. So, how does your experience as a kid getting involved in music and in your church, you clearly had a lot of interest there, and someone at the church took you up on that. So, how does that affect how you recruit folks for the dream team or maybe foster younger volunteers in worship team?
Yeah, I think for me, my philosophy on serving and having people serve is, I mean, for my own story is just I don't know where I'd be without the local church, and
Mhm.
really without serving and having that community of people that you're not just living life with, but you're working towards a common goal that's bigger than yourself and building the kingdom of God and building a local church. I think
Mhm.
everyone needs that. I think everyone needs to have a place where they can live for something that's bigger than themselves, and
Mhm.
also exercising the gifts that God has placed in them. I think everyone's been designed on purpose for purpose and with specific gifts that they can then express and use to build the local church. But I also am a
Mhm.
big proponent of like, at the end of the day, we're here to serve, and we will serve purpose over our preference. So even if we're not operating in our, for my example was like I wanted to play electric guitar, but the need was
Mhm.
for a keys player, and then the need was for a bass player,
Mhm.
and there were times where I was like, I don't want to do this. I want to do what I want to do. But at the end of the day, when we're part of something greater than our preference, then we're gonna always prefer the purpose over our preference. So I think that's kind of been my philosophy with helping just even cast vision and sharing heart to our volunteers and new people as they come through the churches. As much as I want to help find where what we say around here is like we think everyone's a 10 somewhere. We're going to find where that is. Where are
Mhm.
you a 10? Where can you serve and operate in at your highest level and your highest capacity? At the end of the day, we're also all just here to serve, whatever that looks like, wherever that's at. Um, and I think when we serve, ultimately that is our purpose. One of my favorite scriptures is Colossians 3:23, where it says,
Mhm.
"Whatever you do, work willingly unto the Lord." It's not if you're doing your favorite thing in the world; it's just whatever you do,
Yeah.
work willingly
Mhm.
and do it unto the Lord. So, yeah, I think that answers your question. Was that what you were asking?
Oh yeah, 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 more than enough. Like what you said, the purpose over preference, because that can be hard for a young, ambitious person to hear. So
Sure.
yeah, and with that, like I really like that. Like, hey, everyone is a 10 somewhere. Like, what does your process kind of look like for really helping people test drive and find where they're a 10 at? And what do you do if it's like, hey, someone volunteered for kids ministry and now they're stuck in the nursery and they hate it and we need to put them over here? Like, what's your like process look like for having them test out things to serve and then like fixing it if it's like, hey, they're not a 10 over here, let's try here.
Sure. I don't know that there's a perfect like I like systems, and the more I work with people, the more I realize systems are hard when you have people involved
Mhm.
because they can be
Absolutely.
imperfect. But I think at the end of the day, it's all built on relationship and the
Mhm.
intentional side of just having conversations with people. And
Mhm.
I think also understanding that we don't own people, we're here to serve people. And so if you're a leader in a ministry, it can, we're like, oh, we need people in our kids wing, or we need people out greeting, or we need people on whatever role, and if we lose them, then
Mhm.
that's a loss. I think that's a wrong mindset. I think at the end of the day, we should be saying, well, where can this person thrive? Because our goal is to help people thrive and in their walk with Jesus and to grow. And so I think having that heart as a leader of saying, well, at the end of the day, even if they might move to a different team. If that's really where they're going to be a better fit, then that's going to be better overall for everyone. It'll lead to less headaches, less frustrations, less them feeling burned out or like they're not operating in their gifting, and that will just create more fruit for everyone overall. So for us, it's not the super slick process, you know. It's really more just we try to be intentional with our leaders of training them to, hey, check in on your team and make sure you're having conversations like, hey, does this feel like a good fit for you?
Mhm.
What else might feel like a better fit? um, and
Mhm.
honestly, like our church, I feel like our pastors and leaders over the years have done a really great job of pre myself. This isn't like me talking about what I've done. This is really just I get to operate in the greatness of all those that have gone before me, and my job is easier because of it. But really, just having a yes culture of like, yep, we'll do whatever we need to do. People are very
Mhm.
faithful and willing to do whatever. But I think it's just having open conversation with people and not feeling like I own them or that they have to be on my team or we're losing.
Absolutely. Well, I like what you said there. It's like, hey, a yes culture, hey, we are open to doing what needs to be done here and
Yeah.
moving the kingdom forward. So yeah, that's spectacular. And Johnny, I'm curious if we kind of shift goals a little bit. Like, what are some of the top goals on your horizons this year? And then the biggest challenges you've had come up in achieving those?
Good question. I think short term, well, right now, kind of medium to short term, we're in the middle of a building campaign. Actually, we're kind of bumping up against
Awesome.
the size of our building, and have been in the process of
Mm, mhm.
following the Lord and what we feel like is expanding and moving into a new facility. So that's kind of our main focus right now as a church is that.
Right.
And so with that come a lot of conversations around vision and purpose and what God's doing. And um, so that's kind of our near term. And then from, I guess, for myself and my area that I oversee, we're really shoring up a lot of how we're training and developing volunteers, um, and really wanting to have that process and that training process and equipping leaders and new volunteers be very similar, and just having a good experience, I guess, across the board with all of our different teams that we offer. So we're developing something, what we're calling playbooks. We might change the name. Think of training guides. Basically,
Yeah.
in your onboarding process, you're going to get a manual of everything
Mhm.
that you need to know for your team, and it'll be something that hopefully our goal and strategy around it is just we want to have something that kind of you can take with you, as well as for our teams to refer back to during our huddles, to just continue that leadership development and reinforcing values that we have as a church, and all the
Mhm.
practicals that we all need to be aware of. And so that's kind of another short-term larger project that we're working on right now.
Yeah.
And then long term, it's really just developing. I think our building campaign is both a short term and a long term thing, because it's really what we
Mhm.
believe is building us for the next how 10 decades, Lord willing,
Yeah.
of building for the next generation and building beyond our own lifetimes, but developing something that lasts beyond us. And um, so that's really both our short and long term goal, just building a healthy church where people can carry it beyond our own life.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, that is spectacular. And yeah, and it really starts in the short term things. I really like the idea of like, hey, specifically focusing on kind of that handbook you discussed, because that
Mm-hmm.
helps equip everyone on the ground today to build the best, church at the life church for, all, the time to come. So, yeah, and with that, like, what are some specific areas? I know you mentioned some of your values, some like operating principles. Like, what are some of those values and operating principles you use to go by at Life Church?
You as an organization, or me personally?
Both.
Both. Okay, awesome. Well, our values are, I mean, we have really four that we kind of
Mhm.
live and breathe by, and that's that we bring our best. So we do have a standard of, hey, we want to give God our best because He gave us everything. And so another word would just be excellence. We want to do things well because God deserves us bringing our best. And so we try to make sure little things are big things, and that we don't miss small details, but that we do things well.
Mhm.
And then also that we think generationally. So for us, and I feel like I'm kind of I guess the byproduct of that value, because I've grown up here in this church, and it's been fun to see the investment that was paid up front. You're not really aware of it as a 6 year old, but now as I'm nearing my 30s and having kids of my own, and like you realize really how much of life is really just building for the next generation and pulling from those that have gone before you, and the wisdom that God's given them, and get building for what's going to last beyond your own lifetime. And then we choose honor is our third one, and really just creating a culture where we honor the people that God's entrusted us, as well as honor the people that
Mhm.
God has entrusted over us, our leaders and our pastors, and authority in our lives. And then lastly, that we have fun. So we try to enjoy the journey, that we hopefully don't take ourselves too seriously, but that we have a good time. One of our things we say is that no meeting's ever as good as you think it is, and it's never as bad as you think it is. So just have fun and enjoy
Absolutely.
enjoy what we get to do. So because it is really the best thing that we get to do, is not even the what we do is not even the best part. It's really who we do it with, and so just enjoying the people that God's placed in our lives.
Oh
So
yeah.
those are kind of our I guess our core values of our church. And then I think for me, a lot of we recently had a conference and I shared a little bit about this, about just focusing on your disposition over your position. So that
Mm-hmm.
your disposition being your character and your values and your habits, and really, I guess your inputs would be another way to say it, over necessarily the specific role you play. I think often of the story of Joseph and how he was not in the position that he preferred most of the time, but because of his character and his value for doing things well and for um, having integrity in the midst of unjust or unfair situations or unideal situations, God still used him greatly because his heart was right through the process, and then position followed the disposition that he had. So that's one that I don't always do, but try to live by, is that really your role and your position will change, and
Mm-hmm.
that your identity can't be in what you do, but who you are. And so that's a big one that I really think there's a lot of value in that. Um, yeah, those would be, I guess that'd be probably my main one.
Absolutely. Well, that is something, very important to keep in mind. So I love that, your disposition over your position. So, yeah, and appreciate you sharing your values too at Life Church, because, it's great to see, like, hey, you mentioned you've been here since you were 6, and now you're really seeing how
Mm-hmm.
when you build something great and you have a spectacular why at the core, you focus on moving the kingdom forward, building something for the next generation. And yeah, well, then when that generation grows up, they'll carry on the torch. So
Carry it on. Yeah,
absolutely. So that is spectacular, and appreciate you sharing so much today, Johnny. And I'm just kind of curious,
for
like,
sure.
what other advice do you have for ministry leaders?
Oh man, I think fight for unity with your team and your leaders. There will always be
Mhm.
opportunity for you to be frustrated. Anytime people are involved, there's good opportunity to be frustrated. But
Absolutely.
at the end of the day, trusting that God's called you where He's called you, to the people that He's placed in your lives, and that you're there for a reason, and it's worth fighting for unity. And that doesn't mean conformity, that we all have to agree, but that we're all on the same page. We're all moving towards the same goal, and we're going to love each other through that process and fight for the unity of our team. I think that will help with longevity in ministry. I think the enemy would want to come against your heart, and the Bible talks about guarding our hearts above all else, because the well springs of life flow from that. And I think disunity or discontentment or frustration is often the breeding ground for us to really get taken out in ministry. So I would say fight for unity is the best thing that you can focus on as a leader in your church and in your life, is to care about the people God's put in your life and to love them well, and to work through
Absolutely.
stuff.
Oh yeah, could not agree more. Yeah, it is so important, just to be unified with folks, and keep knowing your why. So yeah, well, Johnny, appreciate you sharing so much today, and excited for what's ahead.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Absolutely.